Given its proximity to Christmas and the New Year, for many it still serves as a time of remembrance with great cultural significance.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Victor Corona. I'm a cultural sociologist and currently a visiting professor at Pitzer College in Claremont, California. I'm also the author of Night Class, a Downtown Memoir, my 2017 book about New York nightlife. And the study of nightlife might seem like a far cry from talking about the winter solstice, but they both deal with ritual, cultural practices, and performance. So I'm looking forward to my conversation today with Cliff.
Hi, I'm Cliff Koenig, a retired pastor living at the Princeton here in Lee Summit, Missouri. And I really feel honored to be able to be talking this afternoon on this topic because actually I don't know much about it. All I remember is that December 21st is my birthday and that it's the shortest day of the year, and that since it was my birthday that I kind of regretted that, but then I knew that the days would get longer, so things would get better. So I'm really happy to learn more about the winter solstice. The first question I have is, what is it and what is its significance?
Well, to start off, I think we need to distinguish between the northern and the southern hemispheres. In the northern hemisphere, the North Pole is tilted the farthest away from the sun, and because of this, daylight hours are shortened. After this point, the days start to get longer again, right? In more scientific terms, we're talking about an astronomical event. What's called the Earth's axial tilt is farthest from the sun, right? In the southern hemisphere, we're talking about the opposite, the longest day and the shortest night, yeah? So what we're going to be talking about today is how the winter solstice is significant to certain cultures, which we'll say more about, as a ritual that kind of marks the change in season, right? And this points to a kind of rebirth via the return of sunlight as the days start to get longer again, right? I think the main things to keep in mind are the solstice's celebration of seasonal change, first, and second, the return of more daylight, right, which is usually associated with more warmth, right? And this sense of renewal is key to understanding the significance of the event for various cultures, right? I think cultures like to mark the passing of time through certain practices like seasonal rituals.
Thank you for that. How does this how is this celebrated then in different cultures?
Well, there are a few examples that we can talk about today, and maybe one place to start is here in the United States with the Soyal as a winter solstice ritual observed by the Hopi and Zuni tribes, right? A practice which marks the beginning of a new year, right? And so this ritual is meant to bless the community, show gratitude for the past year, and mark the return of more sunlight. This time, this tradition involves prayer sticks and special dances that are meant to augment the health of the tribal community. And so the focus here is on the sun as a force that sustains life, right? And this focus on renewal also opens up a space for welcoming positive energy for the longer days that are on the horizon. Yeah. This is obviously just a broad and general statement about the Soyal. There may be specific differences in terms of the individual communities within these tribes and how they celebrate Soyal. Now, one of the better known rituals that you might have heard of, Cliff, is Yule, right? A Germanic and Norse pagan tradition, which has had a significant influence on our own Christmas rituals, right, in the West. And so Yule emphasizes the triumph of light over darkness and the return of days with more sunlight. So you might have heard, for example, about the burning of the Yule log, which is a kind of stand-in for the sun, right? And burning it makes us think about the gradual return of warmth as the days get longer, right? Yule also stood for a time when communities would get together for meals, for festivity, for gift giving, which are obviously big parts of how we celebrate Christmas today. Yeah. We also imported the use of evergreens like mistletoe, ivy, holly into our own Christmas traditions from Yule. On a very different note, Dongji is a traditional East Asian festival with its roots in Chinese culture, but one that's also observed in other East Asian countries, right? So Dongji is based on the yin and yang concept, the sense of balance and harmony in the universe, right? With the winter solstice representing yin's extremity, yeah. And with the days then gradually growing longer, this symbolizes the return of yang, right? So this idea of balance and harmony is key to Dongji as a festival coinciding with the winter solstice. It's also a time for family reunions. Families get together to share a meal like tang yuan, which are sweet rice balls. This family focus also includes honoring your ancestors by visiting graves or making offerings, right? There's also a health focus here. Dongji is a time to strengthen the body's resistance to cold weather by consuming certain foods, right? So in this particular case, we see the example of a ritual that doesn't just mark an astronomical event, it's also about family and harmony in life. Yeah. So maybe now we can talk about older rituals like an older ritual like the ancient Roman Saturnalia, which was held to honor Saturn, the divine being associated with agriculture and the harvest, right? Gift giving, performances, evergreen decorations, candlelighting were common, which may have also influenced how we celebrate Christmas today, right? And obviously, none of these influences are, direct A to B necessarily. Historians and sociologists are always debating how these traditions get transmitted across cultures, right? But if we're thinking about the Saturnalia, the festival usually spanned several days around the winter solstice and featured festivities that included things like the temporary reversal of social roles, right? So enslaved persons could enjoy a brief period of equality during a time when social hierarchies were challenged, right? So that's a few examples I wanted to highlight.
I was reading on that in some of those ancient cultures, they like planted seeds because they knew that the sun would be more and more prevalent, and they would be able to sprout and grow, and they celebrated that too. This all really tied in with my own situation. My wife died less than a month ago, and so this is this winter solstice and Christmas and all is really a significant time for me too. And so this whole thing of the sun will bring its warmth again, which the solstice, S-U-N, we celebrate that. And then of course, from my Christian perspective, the S-O-N will become more prevalent too as Jesus is born, the sun will rise and so forth. So actually this ties together and helps me to even appreciate this time of the year even more. And also the winter solstice, because it's a cold, dark time, and the sun will come. And it really gives me a lot of hope. I wanted to mention that too.
Yeah, that's a beautiful interpretation of this season, and I'm very sorry to hear about the loss of your wife. My condolences there. But that's a beautiful way to kind of link all these themes together. So thank you for that, Cliff.
I appreciate that. And so then, like, how has it changed uh, the whole significance of the winter solstice? Has it obviously has changed over the year.
Right. Well, we just spoke a little bit about the Roman Saturnalia and also Yule and those holidays' significance in terms of hope for renewal and rebirth. I mean, you understand this, Cliff, as a pastor and someone with an understanding of Christian history. As Christianity spread throughout the world and more conversions of cultures happened, some of these traditions were gradually absorbed or transformed in order to fit with Christian rituals, right? And maybe the most famous or well-known case of this is the placement of the Christmas holiday on the calendar near the winter solstice in order to kind of overshadow these pagan rituals. So, in terms of how we think about the solstice, nowadays we obviously have the benefits of astronomy and scientific research, right? We understand the winter solstice in astronomical terms as it relates to the tilt of the Earth's axis. But given its proximity to Christmas and the New Year, for many, it still serves as a time of remembrance with great cultural significance, right? And, I personally, I actually think that daylight saving time also plays a role here. I think turning back the clock seems to be something that's universally loathed, right? I know my friends and I certainly don't like the shorter days and how early the sun sets, right? So I think some may want to celebrate the solstice today, these days, as a marker of days gradually becoming longer, right? So I think this is why you get things like light ceremonies today commemorating the solstice, even if they no longer have any kind of religious significance to them. There's just this gratitude for longer days, more sunlight, more warmth, and so on. And then, another related factor that I think we should touch on today is, climate change. These days we're paying more attention to our relationship with the planet, humanity's relationship with the planet as it gradually warms. So astronomical events like the solstice give us opportunities to consider our place on Earth and in the universe more generally.
I hadn't thought about that part of it, but that really fits in with that, with all of this too, at this time of the year, that that can be emphasized in the midst of all these other, kinds of observances of the season. Are there misconceptions about the winter solstice? I know there's a misconceptions about in Christianity and celebration of Christmas and all of that. But what about the winter solstice?
Right. Well, there are a few myths out there that we should talk about, and it's interesting in telling people about my virtual visit with you all at Arrow today. I heard some of these misconceptions from friends, right? So if they watch this, I'm happy to have an opportunity to address them. The maybe the biggest misconception is that during the solstice, the Earth is farthest from the sun, right? The winter solstice is a result of the Earth's axial tilt, not its distance from the sun. So it's important now to, specify what kind of astronomical event it really is. Yeah. And then we started off, I think, trying to clarify another misconception, which is that it's the same day around the world, right? As we started off saying, the Northern Hemisphere's winter solstice is not the same as the Southern Hemisphere. So that's another thing that I think we should clarify. And then another myth that I remember from when I was a kid was the idea that the winter solstice is the coldest day of the year, right? A kind of, it might be the shortest day and the longest night, but the temperature has nothing to do with that in particular, right? Obviously, that depends on what area of the world you live in, Missouri versus California. and specific weather conditions where you live, right? So that's another thing to clarify. And then maybe one last one is that the date of the solstice can also, vary a little bit. So those are some misconceptions that have popped up.
That's really interesting. Another thought that I was wondering about was that, like in our culture, everybody celebrates Christmas. Everybody celebrates to a certain extent the winter solstice, but are there some places where maybe they don't, this isn't emphasized or even talked about?
Yes, for sure. Not everyone celebrates the winter solstice in the ways that we've talked about today. Some cultures mark the passing of seasons without specifically addressing this as an astronomical event. So, definitely not every culture has a winter solstice celebration. Yeah.
Okay. Just getting back to what you were talking about with the celebrating the winter solstice. I was reading that in England at the Stonehenge, they have the pillars there, and they have those stone pillars arranged in the exact same spot so that on December 21st, the sun will rise directly between those two, those two pillars. And so then they have a celebration with that. And that was helping me to think, as a Christian pastor, that all of this is under, that there's a God who has arranged all of this and created all of this. And, that fits in with taking care of it too, with, like taking care of the earth and so forth. I don't know if you have any reaction to that, how this all fits together because there's a God, like who has put it together and directs it all.
Right. I think there are a variety of ways to interpret it. And what you just mentioned about the alignment of Stonehenge is a great example of what some people think of as the natural or the order that exists in the universe, right? Whether you believe it has to do with the deity like Saturn, or whether you believe in a Christian God, the idea that there is some kind of order and an order that should be recognized and celebrated via ritual is, I think, key to a lot of these different cultures' celebrations of the solstice, right? So I love the fact that you brought up this idea of alignment at Stonehenge and how that all relates to the sense of order. I tried to touch on it a little bit when I was talking about Dongji and this idea of harmony and balance, right? So the idea of an order to the universe that we acknowledge on the day of the winter solstice is, I think, a really important thing to signal. So I'm glad you brought that up.
So then in my mind, then as I look forward to December now and the 21st and birthday, of course, and all this, then to you touched on it with, like thinking about the earth and taking care of it and other things, and the whole season of darkness, and that it's going to get lighter and warmer again. So then I was thinking about how can I apply this to my life so that I make this celebration of the winter solstice do something newer and better and practical to my life. And the best thing that I could think of was random acts of kindness, to dispel the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
I was at Walmart this afternoon doing some errands, and I decided to celebrate by getting a sub sandwich, with everything on it except jalapenos. And as I was sitting there eating that sandwich, then I noticed the Walmart greeter there, and it was right before lunch, and this whole thing of random acts of kindness and dispelling the darkness. came into my mind. And so I just decided to, as I was leaving, to just say, uh, I just wanted to notice how you greeted all the people. And I really thought that was really neat, that, uh, giving them some encouragement in the midst of the darkness. I would like to treat you to lunch. And so, I handed him a $10 bill. And of course, that was something that he appreciated,
Mm.
but me even more, because I was privileged to do that. So I'm wondering how to make this, uh, if, if this is a good way to make the celebration of the solstice practical in our lives, and maybe there's some other ways too.
Well, what you just said is an absolutely wonderful way to commemorate it via a random act of kindness. Paying it forward, giving someone, paying for someone's lunch is, I think, an excellent way, while also treating yourself. So the way you just suggested, and it doesn't have to be somewhere, super fancy, at a Walmart, at a Costco, wherever you may be, and treat yourself, enjoy a meal, minus the jalapenos, and treat someone else to lunch is, I think, a great way to do that. So what you just said is, I think, a great starting point for this part of our chat. You could, throw a little party. It doesn't have to be extravagant. Just get together with friends and family. A few years ago, I went to an outdoor winter solstice party here in Los Angeles that featured performances and games in someone's backyard. People just kind of cobbled together some neat little skits to do on the winter solstice. And you can also light candles as a testament to the significance of the event. Maybe do, a little arts and crafts project. You probably have already, the viewers have probably already decorated for Christmas, but you can prepare other decorations or plan for the new year, right? In the past, maybe this sounds a little strange, but I myself like to send out Happy New Year cards instead of, or in addition to Christmas cards, right? So you could write those on the solstice, right? Or send around this video for people to watch. If you prefer to do something on your own, which is totally fine, you can get up and watch the sunrise, meditate, pray, listen to music, or, write in a journal, or do the same things before the sunset, and ideally, if you can find a scenic spot, or if you have a nice view from your home, that fits perfectly with the idea of the solstice. And another thing which my students have actually mentioned is doing something intentional. They love using that word intentional, in the sense that you declare your intentions for the coming year, or even as a way to prepare for the actual holiday season, right? Think about the past year, but without ruminating, right? Just reflecting on what went right, or how you can improve, what kinds of acts of kindness you'd like to do in 2024. And then subsequently, as the days start to get longer, think about how you want to spend your time, right? You can also maybe light a candle or two as you do this, say a prayer, whatever is consistent with your own system of beliefs. I actually think one of the most important ways to celebrate the solstice is spending time outdoors as a way to connect with nature, right? And you mentioned the alignment at Stonehenge. You mentioned, Cliff, the idea of a kind of order to the universe, perhaps. So, the time you spend outdoors doesn't have to be a long and arduous hike. And it can just be, a little stroll, or sitting outside for a few minutes if the weather permits. I'm a big fan of how a little fresh air can improve our wellness and our outlook, and maybe if it's safe, you can do a little bonfire. I know that, fire pits are really popular here on the West Coast. So, it might be a little cold in Missouri, but, something outdoors, I think, is a nice way to commemorate the solstice.
What you were just saying there triggered the thought in my mind. I'm living on the third floor here at the independent living, and I have this nice view on the third floor with a little patio.
Oh,
And I have
wonderful.
to admit that I haven't seen a sunrise since I moved here. So I'm determined now, from now on, beginning at Winter Solstice Day, I'm gonna make sure that periodically, at least, I'm gonna get up just to see the sunrise, because
Awesome.
I can see that from my window here, and that can help me in, from my perspective, with all kinds of gratitude, like to my maker and to the sun, the SON, and that just to see the sunrise, that is something that I'm committed to doing now, just because you mentioned that.
Good, good. That's a great way to commemorate it. And if you do it on your birthday on the solstice, that's perfect.
There you go. And then that applications to living here at the Princeton, then I'm thinking about that too, about the whole random acts of kindness, and like you said, taking walks outside. We can implement all that, and I see it here at the Princeton, with where the people who work here do random acts of kindness, for those of us that are residents. And like, I lead a Saturday night worship with the assisted living people, and this is going to give me new enthusiasm for discussing with the people how we can do more of that, so that we living here and having so much in common. And sometimes it's dark, and lonely, and all that uh, we need each other uh, to develop ideas where we can bring sunshine into our lives.
You're right. That's again a beautiful way to put it, right? And I think the solstice marks a time when we're welcoming back the sunlight. And so to recommit ourselves to acts of kindness, to community, to helping people work through the loneliness and the darkness, I think is an excellent way to frame this discussion and this time of the year. So I appreciate that.
Well, that's, I don't know if there's any other thoughts that you have that you wanted to bring up. That pretty much covers what I had in mind.
I think we covered most of the key points. I enjoyed this conversation, and I wish everyone a happy solstice, and you, Cliff, a happy birthday, and hope that you all do something fun.
And I pray blessings on your work too, with doing your teaching and writing the books and so forth, and sharing this warmth with other people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cliff. I appreciate that.
And I think to myself,